In this lesson, we'll learn about extrusion and insetting, and we'll also talk about some of the weird quirks that you can run into with extrusion. So let's get started. Here we are in Blender with our default cube and our default scene, and the cube is selected already. We are going to immediately go into edit mode on this cube by pressing tab. Now that we're in edit mode, we are going to hit AA to deselect everything, and we're going to switch to face mode by hitting 3 on the keyboard. Now we're going to select the top face on the cube, and we're going to start our first extrusion by pressing E on the keyboard. That's the shortcut key for extrusion. You can see that we're stretching out some new geometry, and that's what extrusion is all about. It creates new geometry based off of existing geometry. And as always, you confirm with left mouse click, or you could press enter on the keyboard. But when you've got one hand on the keyboard and one hand on the mouse, it's usually just easier to left click. Now, there is this menu over here that we haven't talked much about. This is the Adjust Last Operation menu. It gives us the ability to change different aspects of the last operation we just did, which is this extrusion. I'm not going to do anything with this right now, but it's important to note that this menu exists, and it's there for pretty much any operation you do in Blender, or at least a lot of them. Even when you're adding a UV sphere or a cone to your scene, you can use this menu to control how many segments the UV sphere has and how many sides the cone has, and that kind of thing. So we can select another face and extrude again. It automatically is constraining along what is known as the normal, and that just means the axis that is perpendicular to the face that you have extruded. When we're extruding, we can choose an axis to extrude along. We don't have to stick with this normal axis, which again is an axis that is perpendicular to the face that you're extruding. It looks like the z-axis in this case, but if we do another extrusion, we can see that it's not. It's the normal axis. Like I say, we can constrain to whatever axis we want. We don't have to stick to this normal axis. We can hit X, and the X in this case happens to be the same. We can hit Y if we wanted to. This wouldn't yield very good results. It would have a lot of faces that end up resting right on top of each other. But for the sake of argument, it's good to note that you can do this. Usually you want to stick with the normal or something similar to it. Okay, so we're going to bounce back to our default cube. Again, I'm going to enter into edit mode by pressing tab. I'm going to switch to face mode by pressing 3. Then I'm going to extrude. And this time, instead of sticking to that normal axis, I'm going to hit the Z key. What that does is it gives you the ability to extrude in a freeform kind of way. Sometimes that's desirable, so it's good to know that you can do it. It's not always easy to get things positioned that way, but sometimes it is what you want. Okay, I'm going to undo that extrusion. I just want to show you real quick that when you're extruding, you can also enter precise values. If you look up in the upper left corner, it's allowing us to enter a precision value just like other operations. So I can use my numpad and punch in 0.25 if I want. And we've extruded that face by 1/4 of a Blender unit. So just wanted to let you know that you can enter precision values for extrusions. And you can also constrain to axes, as we talked about before. All right, now I'm going to undo that. There's more to extrusion, but I want to show you insetting first in order to be able to talk about this better. I'm going to select this face. It's already selected, and I'm going to press I on my keyboard, and you can see that we're starting to inset the face such that there's a new face in the center of the outer face. The outer face has been converted into additional faces to surround this face. And that essentially is what insetting does. We can do it multiple times if we want. And then we can grab different faces and extrude, making this kind of strange recessed area. Another thing we can do is inset like we did just a bit ago, and then we can extrude outward. And this is what I wanted to say further about extrusion. Weird, I'm having some difficulty there. I just hit the period key on my numpad to bring that face front and center in my viewport. That's a hotkey as well. Sometimes operations start to act weird, like I was having difficulty getting much movement out of my inset operation there. So if you hit period, it'll bring the face way in, and then you can roll back out, and then suddenly things will work better again. Anyway, I've inset the face, and now we can hit extrude, and instead of going outward, we can go inwards. And this is how we can create recessed areas in our model. I'm going to open a new blend file here. Going back into the default cube, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that can go wrong with extrusion, or some things about it that might not be readily clear until you've gained some experience with it. Extrusion, like we said, can allow us to extrude upwards or downwards into the model. And we can do this, but if we do this, we're going to have some strange issues. If I select the model entirely and we start to roll around, we'll see kind of this strange pattern occurring. And if you're not experienced with this, you'll wonder what in the world's going on. And what it means is that there's faces stacked on top of each other, directly on top of each other. Because when we extrude it and extrude it downward, we're creating new geometry that's going down inside of this geometry. Thus, it's creating faces that are new on top of the faces outside that were already existing. This is not desirable. It will yield a lot of problems. A lot of graphical artifacts when you go to render. Artifacts are issues or problems that are visible in your render that you can see. Little bits that don't look right, and this won't shade right like this. So you don't want to stack geometry on top of itself. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to make sure I'm in face select mode. Select the top face. Another thing that's not readily apparent about extruding is that you can start an extrusion operation on a face and then hit escape to cancel it. Now everything looks just fine, but what's not clear is if we grab that face and hit G to move it, we'll see that the geometry is still there. It looked like it wasn't, but it is. So we've got a face stacked on top of a face. And you can't really see it very well, but it's definitely there. And this will cause issues as well. So you've got to be aware that it's possible to extrude by 0. Sometimes this occurs by doing it on purpose, by extruding and then entering a value of 0 on the keyboard. And there's certain cases where that's desirable and you want to do that. But then there's also times when you do it sort of accidentally, and that is when you are extruding and you hit escape. However it happens, you can fix it by selecting the model entirely and then hitting M on your keyboard and choosing the appropriate option. M is for merge. This is the little merge menu that pops up. We're interested in the by distance option. We want to merge vertices by distance, meaning that vertices that are very close together are going to get merged together to be single vertices. So where there's two vertices stacked on top of each other at each corner, each pair will be merged together to be just one at each corner. When we do that merge by distance operation, it will appear down here in this area. It'll tell us how many vertices were removed. So it's important to watch when you're doing it to see, did it remove any vertices? Sometimes you try to do it on a model thinking that you might have duplicate geometry and you don't have any. Sometimes you have way more than you realized you had. Alright, so we're going to do it right now. Keep an eye down here and let's see what happens. Okay, it's actually down lower than I thought. Anyway, just wanted you to be aware that that's something that can happen. And, usually you don't want duplicate geometry or stacked geometry. You want to try to avoid that pretty much all the time in your modeling. Frequently, it's a good idea to do this process of removing doubles on any model that you finish. You want to select the entire model and try to remove doubles and see if anything gets removed. Alright, so we're going to dive into another default cube for editing and hit AA to deselect everything. Two more interesting things about extrusion are that you can extrude just edges or you can extrude even single vertices. I want to demonstrate that real quick just so you know that you can do it. So we're going to hit 2 on the keyboard to go into edge select mode. And what I'm going to do is select 2 edges and hit E for extrude. And then I'm going to hit Z to constrain to the Z axis and pick my spot that I like and click left mouse to confirm. It is possible to extrude just a single edge. I'll select this corner one. I'll hit E on the keyboard. And this time I'm going to constrain to the XY plane by hitting Shift C. And then I'll just left click to confirm. And there we are. I'm going to undo all that. And this time I'm going to press 1 on the keyboard to make sure that I'm in vertex select mode, and I am. And I'm going to select a single vertex and hit E to extrude. And here we can see we're pulling on a single edge. So it's literally possible to make just a single edge by extruding a vertex. You could also extrude multiple vertices at once. So I'm going to select 2 of them and hit E. And here we see that it'll pull out a new face. So there's lots that we can do with extrusion. Extrusion is one of the most primary operations that you can do when you're modeling. In this video, we learned about extrusion and insetting, and we talked about some of the quirks that can occur with extrusion.